Welcome to Manifest, hosted by international evangelist, teacher, and author Perry Stone. Enjoy unique insight into prophetic and practical truth. It's time to feast on fresh manna, so get ready to be blessed and encouraged. And now, here is your host and teacher, Perry Stone.
All right, you know, in the economic times that we have been in the nation for the past couple of years, they talk about jobs and the necessity to find a job. On today's Manifest telecast, Walter Hallam is going to be sharing with you 5 things that every boss wants to hear when they're about to hire someone or when they're looking to hire someone. So if you are wanting another job, if you're looking for a better job with better pay, or if you don't have a job, this program is for you. And I can't wait to hear this myself. I have learned so much from this brother. You know, I call you the revelator. Because pastors a lot of times deal with the cares of the ministry, right, and they don't have the time to put into study. But this man, I wish you could see his Bible. Every page is just totally marked up. He doesn't need an outline book because his Bible is his outline book. Take us there right now. I want to get right into this. I know the people are excited about hearing what you have to say on the subject.
Thank you, Perry. It's great to be here. You know, sometime back over in the Houston area, we pastor not far from NASA Johnson Space Center. So they cut the program and about 7,000 people lost jobs in our area. Many of these are engineers and very qualified people, to say the least, you know. So people are looking for jobs, and so like in many places in our country, we dealt with it. So we started praying every single time we come to church that people would get their jobs.
I remember you doing that.
Yes, and so I began to instruct people, because I've employed in my lifetime 1,000 people, I'm sure.
Oh, wow.
Easily that many in my lifetime. And with our schools and ministries and businesses and stuff. And so there are things that you look for, certainly qualifications for a particular job. But listen to this right here. Every employer that's going to hire someone, he needs to hear that person say something like this: "You'll never have to repeat an instruction to me twice."
But you better be sure that you can do that.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, you'll never have to repeat an instruction twice. Whatever you need me to do, you know, on this job, you tell me and I'm going to go do it. Because if a guy has to be repeating it twice all the time, we might ought to cut his salary in half. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And if you got to tell him 3 or 4 or 5 times, well, that's what you do to kids. You don't even need a salary, just giving them allowance, you know, because it's just creating more work for you.
So say that one again.
So the first thing is that employer needs to know that you don't have to just keep telling me what to do. You tell me one time and I'll get it done.
Yeah.
You tell me the second thing is this: I'll complete the job with excellence that you give me. If a man is going to hire someone and bring them on, they want someone who will work and do that job and complete the assignment that they're given.
That's good.
Not just get it started and then just kind of monkey it out during the week and all. No, they'll get it done.
Yeah.
You know, there are people that make it happen and get it done. The third thing, and I think this is important, they need to be people who persuade that boss to understand, I am agreeable in just about any environment you put me in. I will keep an agreeable spirit about me.
I'm not going to create confusion. I'm not going to create discord.
Not going to be critical.
I'm not going to challenge your authority.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that works in churches too, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, in churches. And that's where I'm getting a lot of this from, you know.
Right.
And then here's the fourth one. This is real important. They have to basically make sure that boss understands, look, I'm easy to correct and I'm easy to instruct. If there's something needs to get done, if I'm not doing it right, you tell me and I'll get it done.
That's a teachable spirit.
Very teachable spirit.
Keeping a teachable spirit. That's important through life, isn't it?
In all of life.
You can never, even as a superior person over the place, you never can get to the point where you're not teachable by people.
Exactly. And then the fifth thing that I think is important, just like that, Perry, is loyalty. You know, it's a really lost art today. It's a divine art too. It's a God art. It's one of the God qualities.
What's your definition if someone were to say to you, Pastor, what do you think loyalty is from your perspective?
That means as long as I am under your covering or working for you, I will not talk bad about you. I won't speak bad. I will do everything I can do to promote you and help you be the most effective business that you can. Whether I work for you for 10 years or for 1 year, while I'm here, you're going to think I'm the best employee and I will always be hireable. If I ever leave you, I will leave in the right attitude. I will be very loyal. I will cover you. I'll cover your back at all times.
Wow.
Yes.
And don't you believe, because my experience here in VOE is we have people that's been with us 23 years, 18 years, 15 years. And that speaks well, I think, of the ministry for people to want to stay with you that long.
Yes.
We've had people actually leave to go get other jobs, but the Lord will bring them back here.
Yes.
And that, we always keep an open door when someone leaves of not taking offense and saying, well, they must not really care for us or they think they're better than us. We don't do that because I always want to keep an open door. As a pastor of a church, when people leave, don't leave upset. Just go out in peace because God may bring you back to that church or you may have a desire to come back to it. Isn't that true?
Oh, absolutely.
So you've got to, in business and church work, you've got to keep at peace.
Yeah.
Depart in peace, return in peace. That's the way to do it, not with contention and strife and anger and frustration.
Yeah, that's right. I do another teaching in a different day. I'll do it for you whenever you're interested in it. But I call it the divine law of disconnection. There's a divine connection where God connects you. You've heard people say it's a divine connection.
Yeah.
But there also is a divine disconnection. And there are times when God will separate things and move you on and move you up. But when you do, it's never time to grind the axe or, try to take out pent-up frustration and all that. That should have already been given to God. And just make a decision to not make it. One of the greatest things, an attorney told me this years and years ago, a friend of mine, we were just having coffee one day. He said, I learned one of the greatest laws of life is don't make enemies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you'll have enough enemy in life if you obey God. You know what I mean?
That's really true.
Sure.
People you don't even know.
Yeah, so
just don't like
Yeah, so don't make them.
They don't like your hair, your dress, or what you said.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a very, very good point. Let me ask you this. For those looking for a job, what as a minister, but also you've been in business in the past, what do you look for when someone comes into the office? And you're going to hire, let's say you got 5 places to hire, five people to hire, five positions to fulfill. I know the position, the experience is upmost. You have to have experience. But what would turn you on or completely off if somebody walked in outside of those 5 things?
Well, I have a little hiring grid. I use 6 points, so I'm going to talk about probably 4 of them too. I don't know about the other 2. But you always have to have the ace in the hole there.
He's going to keep the ace in his pocket.
First thing, do you feel like they're compatible with the team that you have? Because success in any business is teamwork. So do they have a compatibleness about them? Right. Secondly, do they have a qualification? Are they actually skilled and qualified, or can you quickly train them up to that particular skill set that you're looking for? Thirdly, because I'm a minister, I'm a holiness guy. I still believe that they ought to live clean. No one's perfect, but they ought to live clean. If they don't have a clean lifestyle, then there's a better job for them somewhere else.
Right.
So they'll either get right or I'll make them miserable before long. So, you know how that goes. So, and everybody should certainly be happy. And then fourthly, this is an interesting point. Do they have this certain dynamic about them that is positive and joyful at all times? Do they have this quality about them that appears to say, whatever needs to be done, I'm the doer of it? I have an assigned task and that's my main job, but I'll succeed if the whole team succeeds. So if I need to pitch in and help somewhere else, it's no big deal to me. It's just part of it. And those are 4 things right there that I look for. And if I can find that in someone, then almost always they're going to get the job.
And here's the thing about people too, because I've got some staff folks behind the cameras here and sitting here, and we have maybe, I think, 19 full-time, some part-time, plus some wonderful volunteers. But I know that when you see someone who is willing, they're willing to stay over, and they're not being paid for that. But they said, I'm going to get this done, don't worry about it. Sure. Or they're willing to take pressure off of you and say, would you let me handle that? Would you quit worrying about it? Those are the people you want to promote.
Yes.
You have a lot of people, and I know this works in anyone who has a business or anyone who is in ministry has seen this if you have a staff. But you have people who are always wanting, I want a pay raise, I want this, I want more benefits. But they're not willing, some of them are not willing to go over and above 8 to 5.
Sure.
I mean, you have some people, and this is just how it is. I mean, I have to be honest. We have it in our ministry. You have it in churches, that when 5 o'clock comes, you might as well just say, if I'm having a heart attack, go ask somebody else to take you to the hospital. No, I'm not saying that. I think I'd get to the hospital. But there are some people that they just say, I've done my job and I'm finished. And there's others who carry the burden with you. Now, what I have discovered in ministry is the people that you want to try to surround yourself with are the people that when you're carrying a financial load, they will feel it and pray with you about it.
That's right.
When you're carrying a situation which has come up, you may be having a situation with your children or your family, and they are willing to step in and say, you know, let me help with this. I also believe God honors that.
Yes, that's
more
right.
than you honoring it or you recognizing it with bonuses or time off. God sees it, and I think God himself begins to honor people like the Esthers, the Daniels, the Josephs. You know, Joseph was loyal when he was a nobody.
Yeah.
He was a servant. And Daniel in chapter 1 wouldn't defy himself at the king's table when he was just a teenager.
That's right, yeah.
And so God honors that.
That's so
in
powerful.
people.
Yeah, there's several of those illustrations like that, of course, in the Scripture, and you know them, Perry. One of them that I think, Joseph, you're talking about, when he was in prison, the Bible says, and it says it in a sentence, and it's one of the greatest sentences in the Old Testament. It says, and whatever was done, he was the doer of it. It says, whatever was done, he was the doer of it. Here he is in a prison, and the next day he's in a palace, and his diligence promoted him. And then, of course, Paul said, look, I labored with my hands. Paul writes 13 books of the Bible and the greatest apostle that the world's ever created under Jesus Christ, of course. And he said, look, I labored with my hands. He said, I didn't have any problem working. Whatever needs to be done, I'm the doer of it.
Point.
That
That's a good
same
point.
principle, one of the things in Luke 13 that Jesus said to me one time in a visitation I had, in a powerful visitation from the Lord, he talked about 4 things that can open the door for the devil to actually attack. One of them is if men fail to be diligent. Well, we're talking about people working on a job. If people are not diligent and intense for what they do, if you remember the story, there was a steward that was supposed to be taking care of a vineyard and a farm, and the master comes back, and the master says, well, it's not producing, I'm going to cut it down. And then the guy says, no, wait a minute, let me dung and till it, let me take care of it, implying that he had not done the job he should have done at that moment.
Oh, that's good. I've never seen that before.
And
wow.
then he said, but let me take care of it. So diligence can override oftentimes many of those things. That's why in the book of Proverbs and in Ecclesiastes, you see so many times when the Scripture says that the sluggard spirit is like an abomination to God.
And that sluggard is actually a lazy person.
That's right,
That's the definition of a sluggard. Did you know there's an animal called a sloth that is in, I think it's in South America, I've written about this, hangs upside down 19 hours a day, picks insects off of itself, sleeps most of its life, and when it dies, you don't even know sometimes it's dead. I mean, it's that lazy. It's a sloth. Look it up. It is a weird looking. It's a weird looking thing, and it's just. And I think in the book of Proverbs where it talks about a sloth or a sluggish person, that's one of the meanings. It's these creatures that are just totally lazy.
Well, you know, we don't ever need to become fossilized in life.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
There's a difference. I read a thing sometime back, and I thought this was brilliant, that back even in the day of the dinosaurs, years ago, there were cockroaches. The cockroaches and the dinosaurs, so to speak, existed at the same time.
Could you imagine?
But a cockroach can adapt, and the others just fossilize. And you know, on a job, nothing's 100% perfect, exactly the same.
Yeah.
You've got to have some flexibility and some adaptation to you, and at least you'll be a cockroach and not a dinosaur.
Oh, that's good. Now, we've got about 6.5 minutes or maybe 7 minutes. What are some of the other points in line with this discussion today? Because, you know, people are wanting jobs, many of them are.
Sure.
And you know, there are areas like Tennessee's doing very well economically compared to other states. And, you know, businesses and car companies are opening up and things like that. What else do you see in line with this? We've been talking some about giving, but the practical aspect of people who need employment, how does it come into play of learning everything you can about something so that you become so important they don't let you go? I know sometimes they have to. Like you talked about NASA. That was a definite government deal, nothing you can do. But can there be a point that you can learn so much about something that they say, that one, and that one has to go, but you better hold on to this one because they know so much to help us?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Oh, I do think it is. A lot of it has to do with their willingness to learn and to adapt, like we talked about a minute ago. Let's take 2 guys on the same job, and they have the same instructor or overseer, manager, boss, whatever. One of them, here's a better way for me to say it. Judas and John had the exact same instructor, Jesus. Absalom and Solomon had the exact same daddy. But one of them was wrong and the other one was right.
True.
And so it depends on how you're willing to receive. So you can get two people in an environment, and you're doing as an employer, you look at that and you say, which one of these guys is adaptable and progressive and working and willing to do what's necessary to make the job? That person is going to generally stay. Our area is like this area here. It's beginning to flourish real strong. You know, over in Texas, and the Houston area is doing real well. And all that's, now our NASA thing hadn't come back yet, but we're believing in Jesus' name that that's going to. But what's important about that is to learn constantly a new skill. Always be teachable and trainable. Learn new skills, new skills, new skills. Information. Man was made by God as an information receiver and dispenser. Receiver and dispenser. When God created Adam, He said to Adam, look, you look at it, you call it something. You get it and you say it. You get it and you say it. So humanity itself is always trying to get information. Well, you've got to channel that down because we live in an information world today.
You get overwhelmed with it.
So guys can become extremely skilled at what they're doing if they're willing to constantly take the information in and apply it. Bring it in and apply it. Because God literally made us that way, spiritually speaking. You have to limit the kind of information you're willing to let in, because information is power or it's distraction, one of the two. It either empowers you or it paralyzes you.
Yeah, because the social networking is great. You have texting, iPad, iPod, the different things we won't name. But if you let it, you can spend hours in an evening, which some people do, typing out messages to people and not really learning anything. So it becomes more of a distraction than it is helping you really to educate yourself to further you beyond where you're at. I think, too, one thing that concerns me about America is there seems to be this such an entitlement mentality that we've come into the past couple of years, to where people, it's almost like they have no desire to work, because if they make a lot of money, the government's going to get a bunch of it. And if they don't make a lot of money, they can kind of lean on entitlements and still make it. And I think it really destroys the human spirit. It destroys the creativity of people in both directions. But at the same time, your fulfillment as a man, and my fulfillment as a man, comes through a lot of times the success of the work that we do.
You know, and that word success, Perry, that's exactly right. It has to do with solving problems. People that solve problems almost never get let go from a job.
That's really true.
People that create problems are always bringing a bunch of problems. Listen, problem solving has a lot to do with answering the question right. Have you ever noticed in the Bible that when God was about to prosper someone, He would ask them a question? That's because questions, of course, are what answers respond to. Solutions come to questions. If our God, who has all of the answers, just poured out the answer on us for no reason, well, that'd be great. There'd be no problems on the planet. But if someone will ask the right question, for instance, Jesus said, He said, Philip, just how many loaves and fishes are there? What's in the crowd? We got to feed all these thousands of people. What do you have? Have you noticed when God's going to prosper you, He asks you a question?
He usually says, what do you have, doesn't he?
He almost always will say, what do you have? Now, He asked the children of Israel in Malachi 3, He said, how will a man rob God? He said, how do you do that? So He actually asked them in a question form there, and what they had done, they had started abusing their children, abusing their wives, and were not taking care of their money correctly. So they're beginning to get in decline from the time they came out of Egypt with all of their abundance till the time they get to the last book of Malachi, you know, the Old Testament, where here they are, they've gone from this high down to a low, they're starting to come this way, and finally they said, what's wrong? And God says, well, will a man rob God? He said, if you're not a giver, and if you don't treat your family right, He said, you don't treat your family right, and you don't give.
Wow.
He said, therefore you're cursed with a curse. Well, if you and I learn the power of a divine question, or Jesus said it like this, if you ask, you'll receive. If you seek, you'll find. If you knock, the door will be open. He said the answer comes from a question. That's why I tell parents, don't get mad if your children ask questions all the time. You know, just kind of channel when they ask and how to do that, keep it in order.
You know, that's the rabbinical way of teaching students. I don't know if you know that. It's the question.
That catecheo, yes.
Constantly, Jewish rabbis and the fathers of a Jewish home, it's questions then answer it, questions then answer it, questions then answer it. You know, and the Lord said to Moses, what's in your hand? He said to the woman, what's in your house?
Yes, that's right.
And he said to his disciple, you know, what do we have here that we can use to feed people?
That's right.
So always remember this, that a lot of times the Lord will inquire of you by asking you something.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have to step out and you're going to have to answer it. We got about 50 seconds here, and I want to come back and do one more program, at least one more program with Brother Walter, because this is so good. He is so full of information and revelation that if I kept him here for a couple months, he'd still be pouring out of it. He's got hundreds of hours of teaching on these subjects. Let me just say this to you, that any information you get from this man will feed your spirit, and you can in return feed it to your people. It is fabulous information, to say the least.